How are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well. We continue to share with you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, and we will share with you some developments related to an operation allegedly launched by the Russian armed forces in recent days, but which does not really exist. As it is known, there is a Kharkiv attack that has been on the agenda for a while, and it is claimed that the Russian armed forces would launch an attack in the direction of Kharkiv and reoccupy Kharkiv, which has liberated from the occupation at the beginning of the war. However, it seems that this was only an allegation. Some Russian sources even published reports and images of the start of this operation, but these reports and images were pure propaganda. Yes, they were. There was a series of clashes in the Kharkiv region. However, the Russian armed forces were unable to enter Ukrainian territory because the Ukrainian border guards were too prepared to allow the Russian army to enter. And others? Let's take a look at developments related to the Russian aggressors who started the conflict. But before moving on to our report, you know that I have to make a small reminder. We continue to bring you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. You know that I read all of your comments on our videos, so please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments with me. And let's start if you're ready. The war between Russia and Ukraine is in full swing, and the Russian armed forces are struggling to make new gains on the front line. The fact that the Russian army has not achieved the desired success in the war, which is approaching its third year, is angering the Russian state administration. For this reason, there is a great confusion in the Russian state administration. Moreover, the fact that the Russian armed forces still have not achieved the set goals is also exhausting the patience of the Russian people. And the Russian people are already against the war. Naturally, the inability of the Russian armed forces to advance even under these conditions disturbs the Russian people even more. So the Russian people's opinion on this issue is as follows. We don't want this war, but we are suffering the consequences of this war. But why is there still no gain, and why is the war still dragging on and on? So while the Russian people are searching for the answers to these questions, the Russian armed forces are experimenting with the different operational techniques to make it easier to find answer to these questions. So a move is needed to create a spectacle. It is necessary to show the Russian people that the Russian army has been successful and that victory has been achieved at the cost of all suffering. But the Russian armed forces don't really have the power to do that at the moment. And as I've already often stating in our recent reports, the Russian armed forces now need shotguns because in the face of modern weapons, the Ukrainian armed forces already have the upper hand by using drones. Since the beginning of the war, the Russian army's weapons have not been sufficient to destroy drones. So in recent days, the Russian attackers have launched an offensive in response to these allegations, and a border crossing began in the Kharkiv region. Several Russian armored vehicles accompanied the Russian attackers, and according to the reports, this attack was carried out with the support of the Russian armed forces, but the attackers were not the Russian armed forces personnel. This is because the Russian military would have stepped in and claimed success if this attack had been successful. But in the event of the failure, the Russian armed forces would have disengaged themselves and claimed that this attack had nothing to do with them. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our report, the Ukrainian armed forces were prepared in this region, and they had already been an invasion here before, right? So, therefore, the Ukrainian troops in the region were well equipped and prepared for any circumstances, and the Ukrainian troops in the region had not been relocated before. Since the end of this occupation, Ukrainian troops have focused only on border protection. Since there had been no clashes, Ukrainian ammunition in the area was sufficient for the war. So when the Russian aggressors started to attack, the response was immediate. And this was allegedly because Ukrainian intelligence had already identified the attacks and its potential starting point. According to reports, the operation of the Russian aggressors failed. As a result of the operation of the Ukrainian border guards, a large number of Russian attackers were destroyed, and these equipments and armored vehicles fell into the hands of the Ukrainian armed forces. After the attack, the governor of the Kharkiv region of Ukraine, Ole Sinahobov, made the following statements about the situation in the region. The groups of the Russian aggressors tried to enter the territory lost by the Russian occupation forces during the stunning invasion of Ukraine in 2022, but our armed forces in the area confidently held their positions and did not lose a single meter. The Russian group poses no threat to Kharkiv. At the moment, their forces here are sufficient only for provocation in the northern direction, and they have no chance to take and occupy our territory. Statements on this issue also came from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Ukrainian Defense Ministry sources made the following statements about the situation in the region. So, the armed forces of Ukraine are defending our positions in the Kharkiv region, and during the day, the enemy carried out airstrikes in the direction of Vovchan using guided aerial bombs. But with the onset of the night, the Russian aggressors increased fire pressure on the front line of our defense with artillery support. In the morning, the enemy attempted to break through our defense line under cover of armored vehicles, and as of now, these attacks have been repelled and the clashes are continuing with different intensities. So, reservists have been sent to strengthen the defense of this part of the front, and the armed forces of Ukraine continue to stop the enemy offensives. We thank every soldier, sergeant, and officer who showed the necessary fortitude and the courage to defend. So, as it is seen from the statements made by the Ukrainian sources, the borderline is quite secure, and the Ukrainian armed forces troops continue to hold their defensive positions. So far, there are no new gains by the Russian armed forces. However, the Russian sources are trying to mislead the public with a highly speculative information. Many Russian sources claim that this attack was carried out by the Russian armed forces, and there is also confusion among the Russian sources. While some Russian sources consider the Kharkiv attacks unnecessary, others argue that they were necessary. So Russian sources are outraged by the inadequacy of the Russian armed forces during the attack. Instead of the Kharkiv offensives, they want to preserve the existing territories, and that they are right about that, because when the Ukrainian armed forces carry out attacks, they don't only hit the Russian targets in the occupied territories. They also destroy targets inside the Russian territory. But what do you think? Do you think the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces is sufficient? And how do you assess the Russian aggressors' attacks on Kharkiv? And do you think the Russian armed forces will launch a large-scale attack on Kharkiv, the last one? What will be the outcome of these attacks? Let me know in the comments, because you know that I read and I care a lot about all of your comments.